after the...
That's it?
You went outside?
You went out for a candlelight dinner? Okay. And I always like to start with a nice little story, right, before we go on to our program in terms of effective communication skills. They say, according to scientists, when they did a little research, they found out that you should never ever chop a tree down in winter. Anybody knows why? That you should not chop a tree down in winter. Woman? Any reason?
Sorry, again, please.
Why shouldn't you chop a tree in winter?
Maybe in winter it squeeze the size.
Oh, the size? Okay, let me tell you, right? What happens is, you find that some of you live in a villa, etc., and you have a little garden. And in the garden there's a huge tree that looks really luscious, green, beautiful. It has lovely fruit on it. You find that children swing on it, climb the tree. The bees are flying in and bees are flying out. And when you look at it, it looks really exciting, beautiful, and so forth. Okay? And somehow it looks like a human being, like its hands raised up in the air, and it's extracting all of the sunlight. And this sunlight basically converts, the light into chlorophyll and so forth, and gives the tree food, as it were. But what happens in winter when you draw the curtains and when you look out? It's no more those lovely green rolling hills and so forth. And the tree is like black, okay, and everything seems dark and gloomy and so forth. And how would you view the tree? The view no more is looking up, or it's perching its hands up in the air. It suddenly looks as though it's drooping downwards, okay? Like there's no life in the tree, as it were. And now in the same light, as I mentioned yesterday, I like to use figure of speech. The tree is like you and I, and sometimes you may be going through a really, really bad season in your life, a very, very hard season. And when people look at you, they say, oh my God, nothing good can come out of this person. This is your winter period. But in the summer period, everybody wants to come around you, enjoy the lovely credit cards that you're splashing around and so on. They want to enjoy the moment with you. But when winter comes, nobody would like to be around somebody that has nothing. But what happens is, according to scientists, they say never ever chop a tree down in winter. Now there's a very beautiful thing that happens in winter. Okay. Now when you find in winter, the trees, there's no leaves, there's nothing. The tree seems like it's empty. There's nothing good can come out of it. Now what happens is, you find that sometimes in life, when you're going through a bad season, they say mourning. Okay. They say mourning. This is correct spelling. Okay, according to one of the Proverbs, they say, mourning, and mourning, right? Mourning, endures through the night, but joy comes in the morning. Mourning means that you weep, etc. And in the morning, there's always the joy that comes with it. Which part of the night is the darkest hour? Okay, which is the darkest hour of the night?
Midnight.
Midnight, okay, that's devil's time. Okay, any other time? Okay. Any other time? The darkest hour of the night. The darkest of the hour of the night is just before
sunrise.
Just before sunrise, okay? And they always say that there's a light at the end of every tunnel. So like this, when you see a tree, same when you see another person going through a moment of struggle in their life and they are at the bottom, you do not chop them off from your life, okay? And at the same time, when you're going through a very hard season, know that you're going to come out of it, okay? As long as you have the breath of life, do not come to the place and say, I'm not going to make it. I can't. And then what happens? You chop yourself off from society. You chop yourself off from life itself. But what happens with the tree in winter is that there's something really, really powerful. Because on the outside, nothing seems to be happening. But because it knows that it still wants to live and see a new day. What it does, it pushes its roots deep into the soil. Yesterday we spoke about value system. That also speaks of your foundational principles. And as you begin to push into the soil, you begin to draw sustenance, you begin to draw life, you begin to draw something that is so beautiful, which begins to propel you for the next journey. And what happens? What comes after winter?
Spring.
Spring comes after winter. And when we look at spring, spring comes with new life, with a freshness in the atmosphere, with things that begins to buzz like bees and so forth, flying into the tree and out of the tree. And again, once again, you find that there's life. So, instead of cutting or chopping off the tree prematurely, wait, because there is another season that's coming, and that's spring. And in every one of our lives, we have that season that comes and takes over. So maybe, I know for a fact that in this room, there are lots of us that go through issues every day. So maybe you're going through the worst issue of your life, and each one is different. For a lady that needs 2 dirhams to feed her kid some milk, and to a man that needs 10 million to fill his jet with fuel to go to another country, to him that's a huge stress. To the mother that needs 2 dirhams, that's also equivalent to the 10 million. Why? She needs to feed the child. So when we look from above and think, oh my God, it's only 2 dirhams for her. But for her, that 2 dirhams is like 2 million, like a person in Africa. So we should not come to a place and judge another person because of the magnitude of the debt or the magnitude of the problem, because each person somehow has a way of coping with it, or some of them cannot cope with the issue. But as long as you have the breath of life in you, and no matter what you're going through, you need to press on like this tree, keep pushing, because when you are your weakest, you are your strongest. And as long as you know that you're going to come out of it, your brain has a way of taking you through it. But sometimes we get in this place where we get caught up and we allow stress and all of that to take over, and that's when diabetes, hypertension, all other kind of problems set in, and we get into problems and we cannot go the extra length because we've brought these things upon ourselves. The decisions we made, like I made yesterday, has brought us to where we are. Now we need to unfold it. We've learned, we've made the mistakes, we've learned through trial and error. Now what we need to do is change our lifestyle and change it. As I mentioned earlier to the colleagues that I was chatting with earlier, it starts with a small amount. And as you begin to build on this, it becomes into something great. So today, as you go back home, find it in your heart. How do I start with something very small, with 2 minutes, or splitting away 1 dirham? Get disciplined to doing that. And when you do that, when the bigger things come, you know exactly how your patterns, see how brain forms patterns, like I have patterns on my shirt. The same way your brain forms patterns. And as it forms patterns, it takes that root in the same way. When you go home, sometimes you say, oh, I'm going to watch a movie, but you've accustomed yourself to going onto the couch and falling off to sleep. So although you plan to do this, but what happens, you automatically just go and you sleep in that same position every day. So what we need to do is break our patterns so that we begin to bring out the best in our lives and even all around us. So like this tree, keep pushing until spring comes through. Spring will enter through one day, and when it comes with the freshness of life, new birth, new life, and new beginnings. Okay, so today we're going to continue where we left off yesterday. All right.